Welcome everyone to GamerMeld. CES is here and Intel just got finished with their presentation, to which I'll discuss in a second. First, make sure to subscribe to the channel because I am going to be doing more videos tomorrow, either videos or streams and videos, I haven't really decided yet, of both AMD and Nvidia's presentations. With that said, let's talk Intel. The company just wrapped up their CES presentation and they announced a lot. Well, sort of. They more or less said, hey, we're announcing this, we're announcing that, and but they never really actually told us anything about it. They just kind of said, here it is, but didn't really tell us about the CPUs or anything like that. But luckily, they did seem to give out the information through other means, so we are going to go over at least some of it. We don't have everything, but there is quite a bit to cover, so let's get started. First up, Intel went over more of the business-oriented things. They discussed new Chromebooks powered by their Evo processors, their 11th gen Evo processors, and then they got to discussing their H series processors, to which, if you saw my video before this, we kind of already went over this a little bit, but they gave us, well, they didn't really give us any more information. They gave us less than we had before, sort of. Really quickly, let me just kind of go over this. I know it's a little bit confusing, but basically they announced their 4-core H or high performance series of processors, specifically for ultra portable gaming. And they very much did kind of push that quite a bit, trying to say this is for portable. That's why there are only 4 cores. But if you followed the channel quite a bit, you know that there's been some rumors about higher than 4 core count CPUs coming out, and Intel did announce this. This is really quickly, this is what we had actually seen before, which Intel did not show during their presentation, but yet apparently did discuss it in their workshop. Basically, they did give out all the specs. They are all 4-core 8-thread processors with up to 5 gigahertz. But one thing that we didn't get before is this right here. They did announce an 8-core Alder Lake H CPU. It also features PCI Express Gen 4 architecture, and I believe they even mentioned 20 PCI Express Gen 4 lanes, but that's it. They didn't give us the name of the processor. They didn't really give us much of anything else. We just know that they have 8 cores. Now with this, they did not discuss thin and light or, any kind of, ultra thin for gaming kind of thing like that for obvious reasons. This likely has much beefier cooling systems and therefore much thicker notebooks. Either way, it is a thing. As we find out more information on that, I will be discussing it. With that said, while moving on to desktop, while Intel did technically announce the 11th gen Rocket Lake desktop CPUs, they basically only showed performance, which I will get to in a second, but luckily they apparently did give out during the tech preview the actual stats of their new 11,900K. As you can see, all the leaks were very accurate. It is an 8-core 16-thread CPU, so Intel did move 2 cores back from the 10,000 series to the 11,000 series. They do have DDR4 up to 3200. They do offer PCI Express Gen 4 up to 20 PCI Express Gen 4 lanes here, as well as I'm almost positive the 11th Gen H series as well, the 8-core one. But you can see that they are backwards compatible with 400 series chipsets, which is what we had originally heard. They're also offering new 500 series chipsets, which is what the leak said as well. It is going to be coming in Q1 2021, which is kind of odd. And that's another thing I'm going to get to in just a second. But we have benchmarks. You can see right here, and I'm going to go ahead and kind of discuss this. If you actually watch the presentation, I believe that they did just make a simple mistake. I don't think it was intentional or anything like that. They basically showed Metro Exodus, but they said that it was their 8-core i7 versus AMD's R7 12-core. Listen to that right here.
Here I have Intel's 8-core i7 system with 16 gigs of RAM, an M.2 SSD, and one of the fastest consumer graphics cards, the NVIDIA 3080 GPU. Next to it, I have an identically configured AMD system, except it features their 12-core R7 processor.
So yeah, it may have been an 8-core i7 because from what the leaks have suggested, the i7 is 8 cores just like the i9, it just has lower clocks. But of course, there isn't a 12-core R7. And when we look here, the 11900K did beat the 5900X, which is obviously the R9, not R7, by 5%. So I'm pretty much positive that it was just a mistake, that they meant to say the i9 versus the Ryzen 9. But regardless, this is the performance difference. Though, as I discussed in that previous video, because we did have the Metro Exodus comparison, that it actually looks like the 10th gen already beats it. So clearly that one was cherry picked, though I do have to say we can see even in Gears of War 5, Total War, and a few other games it does beat it. Obviously it's best to wait for third-party benchmarks, but this is what we're seeing so far. It looks like the 11900K is going to come back potentially and take the gaming crown, but of course a major issue, or at least there is a major issue with them moving back 2 cores. With that said, Intel announced something really strange right at the end. But first, if you're looking at getting parts for your next PC, check out kit.co/gamermeld, where I go over hardware suggestions based on component type. I also give a short description for why you may or may not want a certain part. Not only that, but when you follow the links, you're helping the channel out. And this is fairly early, so I'll be adding a ton more in the near future, as well as keeping it updated as new hardware comes out. So visit kit.co/gamermeld today. They discuss their next gen, so 12th gen Alder Lake desktop and mobile CPUs. The thing that makes that really weird isn't the fact that they're saying, okay, we are gonna, we have these 11th gen coming, it's only gonna be 8 cores, but if you're wanting more, hold out just a little longer for Alder Lake. They actually stated that the processors are coming in the second half of this year. Don't forget, if we look right here, the 11th gen is coming Q1. Now, there were some rumors a little while back that we were going to be getting 11th gen and then 12th gen pretty quickly, but wow, we are in fact talking in the same year. Now, it could be, it's likely Q4, but 2 releases in the same year is still pretty wild. We're talking just a few months away. And I think really this just goes to show how much Intel understands that 11th gen is really just a stopgap to get you to 10 nanometers. With that said, they did even go over a little bit of Alder Lake. You can see that the earlier rumors were completely accurate. 2 new core architectures, and they specifically mentioned the big dot little design. So this is going to really change things up for desktop CPUs in general. Remember that big dot little was specifically engineered for mobile devices to save power. Why in the world they would bring it to desktop is still... I'm just thoroughly confused by this. I understand that saving power on desktop is a good thing as well, but this is a system that you're going to be using all of these cores. And with the big dot little philosophy, you basically have very efficient, not so powerful cores with extremely powerful cores. And if you're using all of those cores in systems that a lot of people use desktops for, obviously workstations, rendering, all these types of things, if you're using all of the cores, the little cores aren't going to be nearly as good as the bigger cores, and you're losing performance. Sure, in day-to-day tasks, whenever you pull things up, you use the little cores for background applications, but applications that need to use all of these cores are just going to be hindered. Obviously, it may only use the big cores for that, which is completely fine, but then you're cutting your cores in half, or however many big cores versus little cores there are. At the end of the day, I guess that's just going to be a wait and see. But one really interesting part is that they did mention that it's going to be based on their enhanced 10 nanometer SuperFin. So not their original Ice Lake 10 nanometers, which is really great news. I actually covered a story maybe like a year ago, I believe it was, where Intel came out and said, no, we aren't going to be skipping 10 nanometers. It's going to be based on Ice Lake. I don't think they specifically said that it'll be based on Ice Lake, but at the time it was basically thinking, okay, you're going to need to move on 7 nanometers by the time that you're ready to release 10 nanometer desktop. Their response was basically, no, we won't have to. And everyone really just assumed that they would still be on Ice Lake 10 nanometers by this time. But honestly, I think that it's just taken them even longer than they originally had hoped. So they're just flat gonna have to skip that generation for desktop. With that said, with the fact that they're doing big dot little design, at least personal opinion, they're likely doing this specifically because even with the better 10 nanometer SuperFin, which from rumors that we've heard, the yield rates are significantly better than Ice Lake's 10 nanometers than the original 10 nanometer design. But from what we hear, even the SuperFin isn't anywhere near as great as far as yield rates, so pricing and things like that, as 14 nanometers. So I'm thinking that maybe, just maybe, they're kind of forced to do this big dot little design so they can finally move up to 10 nanometer SuperFin. Maybe the little cores will be 14 nanometers, or just simply they obviously won't be as powerful. They won't have nearly as much requirements and things like that. Hence why they haven't already brought it to the desktop sphere. These will basically be like laptop cores in the desktop CPU. And the only thing that I can think is that that is why they're doing it, because their yield rates still simply are not good enough to bring us a full desktop CPU. Regardless, that is really exciting, but it's also a bit of weird news for anyone who's looking to purchase the 11th gen CPUs. Anyway, that does conclude today's video. I hope you liked it. I know I kind of rambled quite a bit, but if you did, definitely make sure to subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and as always, have a great day.